Here are the top stories for today, February 5, 2020. The Philippines expects to welcome back the Filipinos repatriated from China amid the spread of the 2019 novel coronavirus. Phivolcs reports more volcanic earthquakes and sulfur emissions from Taal Volcano in the past 24 hours. General Santos City declares a state of calamity to prevent the spread of the 2019 NCOV. And the Philippines commits to develop its ties with the United Kingdom and its former bloc, the European Union. Good day, I'm Bench Bondok. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. We begin with the developments on the novel coronavirus. The Department of Health has confirmed the country's third case of the NCOV. The patient was identified as a 60-year-old Chinese woman who initially tested negative for the virus. The Chinese national arrived in Bohol from Wuhan, China via Hong Kong on January 20. Health Undersecretary Eric Domingo said they are now tracing those who had contact with the woman who has since returned to China. As of Wednesday afternoon, the DOH recorded 133 persons under investigation for the virus. Staying with the government's response to the NCOV, the first batch of Filipino repatriates from China are scheduled to arrive on Saturday. Malacanang said they will be arriving at the Clark Airport in Pampanga and will be transported to Fort Magsaysay in Nueva Ecija for a mandatory 14-day quarantine. The Department of Foreign Affairs says around 42 Filipinos in Hubei province have expressed their desire to return home amid the 2019 NCOV outbreak. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo assured that all safeguards made by concerned government agencies are now in place in order to contain the deadly virus. Aside from Fort Magsaysay, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said the government is also eyeing the naval station at Caballo Island in Cavite as a possible quarantine area for returning OFWs. According to the World Health Organization, global deaths due to the novel coronavirus have reached 427, with more than 20,000 infected, mostly from China, Hong Kong, and Macau. The Department of Foreign Affairs is urging Filipinos worldwide, especially in areas affected by the novel coronavirus, to take the necessary personal precaution to ensure their health and safety. Filipinos in China may contact the hotline numbers of the Philippine Embassy and Consulate General in China as you see on your screens. You may also access the WeChat hotline of the Department of Health and the DFA. Just log on at dfa.gov.ph and scan the WeChat application's QR code. For Filipinos in Wuhan City and the rest of Hubei province who wish to come home, you may contact the Philippine Consulate General in Shanghai until Wednesday for arrangements. An update on the status of contact tracing. The Civil Aeronautics Board on Tuesday said the airlines will readily give passenger information needed by the Department of Health to trace those passengers who are on the same flights with the two individuals who tested positive for the novel coronavirus. The DOH has been looking for passengers on board Cebu Pacific flights 5J241 Hong Kong to Cebu and DG6519 Cebu to Dumaguete, and Philippine Airlines Flight PR2542 Dumaguete to Manila. Health Secretary Francisco Duque said only 17% of the 331 passengers had been contacted as of Tuesday. The airlines, he said, provided them with the passenger list but with no contact details due to the Data Privacy Act. PAL spokesperson Shelo Villanuna said the airline has provided passenger manifest to the DOH, which includes the contact details of passengers on the flight. She said PAL also reached out to the passengers. On the other hand, Cebu Pacific spokesperson Charo Lagamon said the list of the passengers aboard both flights has already been provided per the request of both the DOH and the Bureau of Quarantine. Meanwhile, Manila International Airport Authority General Manager Ed Monreal said there is no reason for airlines to withhold the needed passenger details. He said under the International Civil Aviation Organization protocol, those seated 4 rows in the front, back, and sides of a patient or confirmed virus carrier must be contacted, and not necessarily all the passengers, as the aircraft is also equipped with high-efficiency particulate air system filters. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III on Tuesday said there is no known cure for the novel coronavirus acute respiratory disease. In his speech at the joint hearing in Senate, Duque reiterated there is no vaccine to prevent the 2019 nCoV because it is a new strain. He said there is no specific treatment except supportive care. Earlier, Duque defined the improvement of a 71-year-old Chinese woman infected with the 2019 nCoV after taking a cocktail of antivirals for treating flu and HIV as anecdotal because 80% of cases in China are considered mild. In its health advisories, the department said proper hand washing, observance of proper cough etiquette, avoiding contact with animals, avoiding large crowds, drinking plenty of water, proper cooking of food, and consultation with a health facility if symptoms of cough and cold persist are the public's best defense against the virus. To date, the DOH has reported a total of 105 2019 nCoV cases, 1 in Cordillera Administrative Region, 1 in Cagayan Valley, 3 in Ilocos Region, 16 in Central Luzon, 36 in the National Capital Region, 4 in Calabarzon, 4 in Mimaropa, 10 in Western Visayas, 16 in Central Visayas, 3 in Eastern Visayas, 5 in Northern Mindanao, and 6 in Davao Region. Lawmakers are eyeing for a supplemental budget to help the DOH combat the deadly virus disease, and the Department of Justice orders NBI to go after purveyors of fake news. Our Janice Cave has more.
Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles on Tuesday said it will be up to the Department of Health to decide whether a higher budget for 2021 is needed to improve its capacity to fight diseases such as the novel coronavirus. This as Representative Arlene Brosas earlier questioned the 50% cut in the budget allocation for epidemiology and disease surveillance, saying it would dampen the DOH capability to prevent future outbreaks. Nograles expressed confidence that the DOH would take into consideration epidemiology and disease surveillance when it submits its proposed budget for next year. House Committee on Appropriations Chair Isidro Ungab vowed to immediately act on the proposed supplemental budget to help fight the spread of nCoV-ARD in the country. Meanwhile, Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara on Tuesday directed the National Bureau of Investigation to look into the alleged dissemination of fake news about the novel coronavirus acute respiratory disease. Justice Undersecretary and spokesman Mark Perete said charges to be filed against the alleged fake news purveyors will depend on the evidence to be gathered during the investigation process. In other news, the Department of Education on Tuesday clarified that only events and activities slated for February will be postponed amid the 2019 novel coronavirus scare. In a Senate hearing on the government's response to the 2019 nCoV, Briones said schools are discouraged from holding field trips in the meantime to ensure learners' protection. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
Still to come, Phivolcs reports more volcanic earthquakes and sulfur emissions from Taal Volcano in the past 24 hours. And General Santos City declares a state of calamity to prevent the spread of the 2019 nCoV. These stories are next when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Ano ba ang sintomas ng novel coronavirus? Kung tutuusin, para itong trangkaso, kaya dapat doble ingat. Ilan sa mga sintomas nito ang pagkakaroon ng lagnat na may kasamang ubo, sipon, paghingal, at hirap sa paghinga. Kapag nakaramdam ka ng mga sintomas na tulad nito, huwag mag-self-medicate. Bagkus, agad kumonsulta sa inyong mga doktor. Pero may mga paraan para hindi na mahawaan pa. Uminom ng 8 hanggang 10 basong tubig. Panatilihing malusog ang pangangatawan at malinis ang kapaligiran. Lutuin ng mabuti ang pagkain, gaya ng karne at ng itlog. Huwag kalimutang takpan ng bibig at ilong kung uubo o babahing. Iwasan ang matataong lugar at ang hindi protektadong pakikisalamuha sa mga hayop. Ugaliin ang madalas at wastong paghuhugas ng mga kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Mainam na kumain ng mga prutas at gulay na hitik sa vitamin C para ang kalusugan ay mapangalagaan. Dapat armado ka ng tamang kaalaman at huwag magpapabiktima sa fake news. Ito po si Benji Durango nagpapaalala sa anumang oras at pangyayari, dapat laging handa.
Shifting gears now, more volcanic earthquakes and sulfur dioxide emissions have been observed in Taal Volcano for the past 24 hours. The Taal Volcano network recorded 223 volcanic earthquakes, including 8 low-frequency events and 1 harmonic tremor that lasted for about 3 minutes. This is higher compared to 124 volcanic quakes recorded the previous day. Phivolcs said these earthquakes signify magmatic activity beneath the Taal edifice that could lead to eruptive activity at the main crater. Phivolcs reiterated that entry into Taal Volcano Island as well as into areas over Taal Lake and communities west of the island within a 7-kilometer radius from the main crater must be strictly prohibited. Taal Volcano remains under alert level 3. In business, the joblessness rate in the country in the fourth quarter of 2019 has eased to 17.5% based on the latest Social Weather Station survey. The survey found that adult joblessness rate declined by 4 points from 21.5% in September 2019 or 10 million adults. The 17.5% who were jobless in December 2019 consisted of 8.1% who voluntarily left their old jobs, 3.5% first-time job seekers, and 5.9% retrenched. The joblessness rate decreased in Metro Manila by 10 points and balanced Luzon by 8 points. Joblessness, however, increased in Visayas by 4 points and Mindanao by 1 point. Meanwhile, the survey classified the net optimism of Filipinos on job availability in the country as excellent. SWS found that 53% of adults were optimistic that more jobs will be available in the next 12 months, while 12% said otherwise. 24% said there will be no change in the number of jobs available, and 11% said they don't know. Staying with business, Philippine ports will remain open to all ships, even from those originating from China and its special administrative regions. The Philippine Ports Authority says this is to prevent the disruption of the international cargo supply chain amid restrictions due to the spread of the 2019 nCoV acute respiratory disease. The only condition is the non-disembarkation of vessel crew and no visitors allowed while docked in any PPA-controlled port or anchorage. Any crew replacements shall undergo strict quarantine period and only be allowed to go home if cleared by the Department of Health. However, ships calling on the Philippines more than 14 days after calling out at a port in China or its special administrative regions shall be allowed to dock without restrictions. General Santos City has declared a state of calamity to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus as more suspected cases are monitored. Laid Kabagani has tonight's regional headlines.
The City Council declared General Santos City under a state of calamity on Tuesday in the wake of the nationwide alert on the spread of the deadly novel coronavirus acute respiratory disease. This as the City Health Office confirmed on Tuesday that it is monitoring a Chinese national who traveled last month to one city in China. The Council approved the release of some 10 million pesos for the establishment of an isolation facility and the purchase of supplies, necessary materials, and medicines. They also authorized Mayor Ronel Rivera to assist and extend financial help to possible patients that would be admitted to private hospitals. Meanwhile, the Malay Municipal Risk Reduction Office reports an estimated 2,000 Chinese tourists in Boracay to be considered person under monitoring for possible exposure to 2019 nCoV. The 2,000 Chinese tourists are presently staying at different hotels and establishments in Malay and are not monitored for signs and symptoms. The MDRRO suggested the establishment of a one-stop shop for safety officers and a medical team to establish a situational report of the health status of the tourists. In Negros Occidental, the provincial government has reactivated the Provincial Infectious Disease Action and Control Council amid the threat of the nCoV outbreak. 5 provincial government-run hospitals, including the Teresita L. Halandoni Provincial Hospital in Silay City, will be capacitated to admit persons under investigation. There will also be dedicated ambulances of local disaster risk reduction and management units. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Quarantine will be asked to monitor seaports in the province. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Laid Kabagani.
More stories from the newsroom. The Philippines commits to develop its ties with the United Kingdom and its former bloc, the European Union. And the DNR reports over 8,000 waterbird species in the wetlands of Sultan Kudarat. Back after a quick break, you're watching the PNA Newsroom.
Sa pinakabagong report na inilabas ng Department of Health, 80 pasyente ang iniimbestigahan ngayon at inaalam kung nahawaan ba sila ng nCoV. Sa bilang na yan, 67 ang naka-admit at isolated, habang 10 naman ang na-discharge na. Sa report din ng DOH, isa na ang namatay pero nag-negatibo sa nCoV, habang may 2 pasyente naman ang nagpositibo kung saan isa naman ang namatay. O baka magulat kayo kung bakit tumaas ang bilang ng suspected nCoV victims. Paliwanag ni Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, pinalakas ang surveillance system at contact tracing ng gobyerno. Umi-effort din ang Research Institute for Tropical Medicine. Sa kanilang sariling test, kinumpirma nila na positibo nga sa nCoV ang Chinese couple. Nasa 30 pasyente naman ang kanilang sinuri ang nagnegatibo, habang inaantay pa ang resulta ng 48 pa. Pinulong na ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte ang Interagency Task Force, kasamang iba pang government agencies at resource person para mapag-usapan ng development at mga hakbangin ng bansa laban sa novel coronavirus.
Everything is well in the country. There's nothing really to be extra scared of that coronavirus thing.
Muling nagpaalala ang DOH na ugaliing maghugas ng kamay, magtakip ng bibig at ilong kung uubo o babahing, at pag-aalaga sa kalusugan para malabanan ng sakit. Para sa latest updates, bisitahin lamang ninyo ang Laging Handa Facebook page, pati na ang PCOO, RTVM, PNA, PIA, RP1, IBC at DOH. Alamin at makialam, huwag magpapabiktima sa fake news. Ito si Benji Durango, nagpapaalala sa inyo anumang oras at pangyayari, dapat laging handa.
The Philippine government reaffirmed its commitment to continue developing close relations with both the European Union and the United Kingdom following the latter's formal exit from the bloc. The Department of Foreign Affairs urged those doing business in the UK to take note of the withdrawal agreement and other documents that may affect their respective industries. The UK officially left the EU following the European Parliament's ratification of the withdrawal agreement between the two parties on January 31. For international conventions, agreements, and arrangements entered into by the EU, the UK will be treated as an EU member state and will continue to be bound by EU rules during an 11-month transition period. A look at our top global stories. Hong Kong on Tuesday reported its first death due to the fatal novel coronavirus. The deceased was a diabetic who had traveled to Wuhan, the epicenter of the virus, in January and returned home after 2 days. The victim had experienced muscle pain since January 29, followed by fever. He was hospitalized at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Yau Ma Tei for treatment and later transferred to Princess Margaret Hospital in Kwai Chung, where he died. Hong Kong has reported 15 cases due to the virus, which has affected over 20,000 others in China. Belgium also confirmed the first case of the new coronavirus in its territory on Tuesday. The patient is one of 9 citizens who were evacuated from Wuhan on Sunday. The repatriated were immediately quarantined and tested for coronavirus in a military hospital close to its capital, Brussels. The Department of Tourism aims to intensify its marketing efforts in other countries to offset the impact of the 2019 novel coronavirus on the Philippine tourism industry. The DOT set the goal of reaching the 9.2 million foreign tourist mark by end of 2020 despite travel ban on visitors from China and its special administrative regions. DOT Undersecretary Benito Bengzon Jr. says the DOT will embark on a more aggressive marketing and promotions campaign in other major markets. Aside from attracting international travelers not covered by the travel restrictions, Bengzon said the DOT will also develop more attractive domestic tour packages to encourage locals to travel around the country. Several countries, including the Philippines, have imposed travel restrictions to and from China, the epicenter of the outbreak. China comes second to South Korea, the top tourist market of the Philippines in 2019. The two are followed by the United States, Japan, Taiwan, Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, Singapore, Malaysia, India, and Germany. And before we go, the Philippines is home and stopover for numerous species of local and migratory birds. This year, as usual, environment officials have monitored thousands of waterbird species freely moving around the wetlands of Sultan Kudarat. During the annual Asian Waterbird Census, personnel of the environment offices of Tacorong City and Sultan Kudarat documented nearly 9,000 species in the lake and its environs. Dr. Sabdullah Abubakar, Executive Director of DNR in Soxalgen, said the high number of water birds were found during the census that began on January 23. The birds were monitored and sighted in the 6,300-hectare Lake Buluan in Lutayan. The DNR has embarked on massive information dissemination around Lake Buluan to increase public awareness of the importance of these water birds. Abubakar reminded the public and the locals living near the wetlands not to harm and capture these birds because they contribute to maintaining a balanced ecosystem. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. The Philippines expects to welcome back the Filipinos repatriated from China amid the spread of the 2019 novel coronavirus. Phivolcs reports more volcanic earthquakes and sulfur emissions from Taal Volcano in the past 24 hours. General Santos City declares a state of calamity to prevent the spread of the 2019 NCOV. And the Philippines commits to develop its ties with the United Kingdom and its former bloc, the European Union. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, check our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. I'm Bench Bondok. Good evening.